Good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased to be here this afternoon to talk to you about the decisive action we are taking to address the needs of Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon residents by giving their municipal governance the necessary tools to build homes that Ontarians need and deserve. I'd like to welcome Mayor Crombie from Mississauga, Mayor Brown from Brampton, and Mayor Groves from Caledon to Queen's Park today. As you all know, today I introduced the Hazel-McCallion Act in the legislature. This legislation, if passed, would begin the process of dissolving the Region of Peel effective January 1st, 2025. This historic initiative by our government would help Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon prepare for the significant growth that we expect in their populations in the coming years, particularly when it comes to building homes. It also honors the legacy of the late, great Hazel-McCallion, a pivotal figure in the growth of Peel Region, who long believed that Mississauga was capable of standing on its own 2 feet. We agree, and we are keeping our commitment to Hazel by moving forward with a plan that will ensure fairness and stability for the residents of Peel, while ensuring that they have the tools they need to succeed. If the proposed legislation is passed, I would appoint a transition board to help municipalities prepare to become single-tier on January 1st, 2025, when the proposed changes would come into effect. The board would make recommendations on actions our government can take to help the transition proceed smoothly. And it would provide a wide range of advice on matters from financial sustainability to how to allocate assets and liabilities. Also to look at contracts and employment matters and to determine future service delivery models. Now, Hazel had a saying that she was eager to remind me whenever I met with her. I, in fact, have a T-shirt that she gave me back in my ministry office that I use as part of anticipating dealing with government decisions. And that T-shirt and her saying was, "Do your homework." By putting this transition board in place, our government is following that wise advice of doing your homework. And I know that's the right approach for the people of Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon. Our objective, as I said earlier, is to ensure these municipalities have the tools that they need to support future population and housing growth in the years to come, to reduce duplication, to lower the cost of government, and speed up the delivery of high-quality services to the taxpayers of these 3 communities. This solution respects the individual priorities and characteristics of these 3 unique municipalities and provides a process for stability that is fair, balanced, and provides that stability for their residents. I'm excited about the opportunities that this legislation presents as we work to tackle the housing supply crisis, because getting the dissolution process right will take a commitment and it'll take dedication from both our government and from our municipal partners. And I know on behalf of our government that Mayor Crombie, Mayor Brown, and Mayor Groves are committed to ensuring the process is done right and carried through to the finish line in a manner that is amicable and constructive. Now we're pleased to answer any questions that you would have.
Minister, are you going to make the municipalities whole in the Premier's phrasing? Mayor Brown is concerned about $1 billion in lost infrastructure that his taxpayers have, he says, have helped pay for over the years. How are you going to be writing a big check for Caledon as well?
Well, the transition board will deal with financial matters, but obviously we believe that there are good quality municipal services that are being delivered equitably and fairly right now in Peel Region, and we believe that the transition board can deal with those matters moving forward. So I have all the confidence, if the bill passes, that we'll have a deal that suits all 3 municipalities.
So property taxes are not going to rise in any of these 3 municipalities because of this de-amalgamation?
Yeah, my focus is on service delivery, right? I want to make sure that the process, those frontline services that I think are key, and that's really the message to the people who live in Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon, that the services that you receive today, I want to be preserved and strengthened as of January 1st, 2025. That's the goal.
Does Mayor Brown want to speak to the $1 billion or that he might lose?
Well, I'd say
I'll stand over here.
Yeah. So, first of all, I say I think there's a lot of opportunity with the dissolution of Peel Region that we can do planning and build housing faster, and so I welcome some of the advantages. The only asterisk I put on this is it relates to the question that you asked, and that is we need to be made whole for the infrastructure that since 1974 we built in Mississauga to service all of Peel region. And the initial estimates we have from consultants the city's worked with is to replace the water treatment facility in Brampton. The wastewater facility would be $1 billion and $3 billion respectively. So that's $4 billion. We'd expect a cost contribution from Mississauga like we did for the facilities in Mississauga. It'll be significantly north of $1 billion. Just in the last month, we've had 4 housing projects stop because of a lack of servicing. Economic development will grind to a halt. Housing will grind to a halt if we're not made whole. I'm grateful the Premier has said very unequivocally that we'll be made whole, and I appreciate his reassurance to us, because it would be catastrophic for property taxes if that wasn't the case. And so it's really reassuring that at the start of this process, the Premier has said that we'll be made whole on what is owed to the City of Brampton.
Minister.
So if I may have the opportunity to respond as well. So this is a very historic day. I've been waiting for this day for many years, as has Hazel McCallie, and I know that she fought the formation of the region of Peel and fought Bill Davis 50 years ago, so she's smiling down on us today. So, I've only asked for fairness and equity in this process. I ask that our tax dollars continue to be invested in our city for our growth and infrastructure, our programs and services. And I will only expect, and I know the minister does as well, that same fairness and equity be the principles that move us going forward as we all grow, and we all grow independently so that we are set up for growth. The reality is the infrastructure was paid for by the City of Mississauga when we were in our growth phase. 70 cents on the dollar. And not only does the water and wastewater treatment plant provide for Mississauga and Brampton and Caledon, but also York region. So there is lots of space, and this, in my view, this is easy placed in a utility and managed by an outside board and be a user pay system. And this is very easy to disentangle. So there are a lot of approaches going forward. I look forward to working very closely with the government. But certainly I'm delighted that the minister will be making us all whole. Perhaps it's Mississauga that will be needed to be made whole for the contributions that we have made over the past 50 years during the growth phase of Brampton and Caledon. Thank you.
Can I just ask the two of you, the two mayors? You speak and Patrick Brown makes faces. Patrick Brown speaks, you make faces. What is this relationship going to be like over the next 19 or so months as you disentangle it? I think a lot of residents are wondering if you guys can actually come together. I don't know if you're going to be there, but if you guys can actually come together to work this out in an amicable way, seeing as how the two mayors seem to have a lot of distrust in one another.
Well, yes, the answer is yes, we will be able to work this out amicably, and I think we have a very professional, very cordial relationship. Of course, we have our differences. We have our differences of opinion as well, and that'll all be evident and unfolded as we go through the audit process, and we've already approved the terms of reference for the audit, and I look forward to opening our books so everyone can see for themselves the status of our finances and our reserves and what exactly Mississauga paid for the past 50 years towards the growth and the development of not only Mississauga, but Brampton and Caledon. And of course, we'll always all be professional as we work together to the dissolution of the region of Peel. And I know we'll be working very closely with the minister and his transition board as well.
Mayor Crombie, since Colin alluded to it,
He didn't get it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So I would just say we're going to be watching this process very closely. And if we express concern, as the stakes are extraordinary. If we have to rebuild our water treatment facility and our wastewater on our own, that's $6,000 per resident. And so we're going to make sure what Brampton has paid in to build this infrastructure, and there's no debate about it. Since 1974, we have built this infrastructure in Mississauga. I appreciate the tone the Premier has set on this, that will be made whole, and no one will be able to walk away from their bill. But let me be very clear. Brampton would never accept our residents being taken advantage of. Every single cent we put in to build that infrastructure in Mississauga, my residents expect back because the infrastructure has been used up. The servicing capacity has been used up. It's like going for dinner and having one party eat the entire plate, give you the empty plate and say, let's share it now. It's wrong, and it would be unconscionable for our residents, and I will not back away from standing up for the residents of Brampton.
And if I may, Like to hear.
I know that we're the child in this marriage, but the children gets to speak in a divorce because at the end of the day, the children, they are affected. So we're the child and we're the children, so we want to speak. And on behalf of my residents in Caledon, we are confident that this decision by the province did not come lightly, and that we are confident that we will be taken care of throughout this process. I have every confidence in your transition board, Mr. Minister, that all of these things will be worked out. And, you know, one of the things that we're forgetting, we're talking about Brampton's residents, Caledon's residents, and Mississauga's residents, but we have 7,000 employees that work at the region of Peel, and they have served all of us well, and they've served our residents really well over the last 50 years. And so, Mr. Minister, when we're talking about the divorce, I really hope that we will be considering those employees, because many of them are our residents of Brampton, Mississauga, and Caledon. So I just want to say that this region has worked extremely well. We're now at the end of our, we've come to the end of it. And again, I have every confidence that we will all be looked after in the end. I don't think that this is a decision that you took lightly or you considered, or did the Premier, nor did the Premier. And so I don't have any issues here in making sure that Caledon's residents will be well served through this divorce. I had a great divorce. I didn't even use a lawyer. And my ex-husband comes and lets my dog out and takes my garbage out. What more can you ask for? So I think that this is the kind of divorce we're going to have here in Peel Region. So thank you.
What does an ideal path forward look like for you? The others are a little bit more clear, but there's questions swirling about, will part of Caledon join York Region? Like, there's a lot of questions coming from, you know, residents and your team. So what does that path forward ideally look like for you?
At this point in time, we don't know what that path looks like, but I'm sure that through this, your transition board, Mr. Minister, that will be determined what we will look like. I will say that Caledon will be the next frontier of growth. We are expected to take a lot of greenfield development, and so we will need services. We will need to be made whole. And again, as I said, not sure where that's going, but I am sure that through this process, that process will determine where we go, how we're served, and will ensure that the growth that we're going to be taking will be paying for itself.
Is this a move you wanted?
It's not a move that we wanted. No, we have always taken a position as a town of Caledon. This is my third time going through this exercise, and we've always maintained a position that we felt that the region has worked really well. The region has served Caledon extremely well. So it isn't a position that, it isn't something that we wanted. But at the end of the day, we're here with this decision today, and I think that we just have to work with it and do the best we can to make sure.
Do you think that your taxes are going to go up?
I don't believe that they will, because I truly believe that this is not a decision that the province arrived at lightly. I am certain, and I can't speak for the minister or the premier, but I am certain that all of those things were looked at, because they know we've been mandated to take 220,000 people over the next 2 decades, and we are mandated also to provide 13,000 housing units, affordable housing units, over the next 8 years. So I'm certain that before this decision was arrived at, this was something that they considered, that it wouldn't impact our taxpayers. Thank you.
And I just think that, you know, we have to have a break in the action, and I'll provide some context. And, you know, Mayor Grove's points are well taken. You know, we made a decision on strong mayors. These 3 mayors, I think we can all agree, they are strong mayors, and we want to give them strong mayor powers like we did in Toronto and Ottawa. When you have that conversation, you end with, what's the structure of Peel Region going to look like? When we talk about facilitators, you have that conversation, you end with, what is the governance going to look like? When you deal with an auditor that will deal with the development charge regime and how that's going to be affected by provincial legislation, when you start that conversation, you end with, what's the structure of government going to look like? You've got 3 very strong mayors, and you've got 3 communities who are very proud to live in Mississauga, to live in Brampton, and live in Caledon. So having a one community model isn't going to work, right? This is the model that all of our work to try to build that 1.5 million homes and to try to give the mayors the tools they need for success. this is always where the conversation ends. This is why the bill was tabled today, because this is where we're at every time with every change that we need to do in Peel Region. So this is the real impetus of why the bill is tabled, to give them those tools.
Minister, why are you getting to pick the transition board? Why not let the mayors get a pick on that board?
Especially if they're paying
Well,
for it.
we want to make sure that we have a board that will be set up for success. We look at some of the past decisions by the province. I think it's always going to be appointed by us. We've got the legislation, we've got the tools that are available to us. So having a board up to 5 is always been a provincial responsibility, and that's the path forward.
We're already hearing concerns that those board members could be very pro-conservative, pro-your government people. What do you say to those concerns?
What I say to them is this, that I think you've heard a snippet of what we're going to be dealing with the next 2 years with the 3 mayors. This is a very complex decision by the government. We need to ensure that the board, the transition board, is set up for success. So we need to ensure that the members are capable of dealing with taking 4 municipalities and bringing them into 3. So it's something that, if the bill passes, that we'll have to move on very quickly. My hope, and I'm not the House Leader, that we'll deal with this bill in a quick way, so I can give some certainty to the people who live in Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon moving forward. This is not something that I want to have significant delay on. I want to get the bill into the bills into the House. I want to get the debate moving. I want to be able to provide some certainty to these 3 communities, that there's a transition board in place, and that we have active and fulsome discussions on the changes that need to be made.
Mayor Crombie, are you ruling out a run now for the Liberal Party of Ontario?
I've been approached by people across this province to give it consideration, but right now I'm solely focused on this incredible day and this historic announcement, and that's all I'm going to say about that matter. And I'm getting it done and getting the job done right for Mississauga.
Do you wish you had a pick on that transition committee?
I just want to be sure that on that transition committee there's no conflict of interest, there's no one that can present any influence peddling, and I have to have confidence, and I do, that the minister will appoint individuals that will not have conflicts in any way, that can guide themselves with the highest of principles to get the job done fairly and equitably for all 3 municipalities.
Do you think 2 years is enough time to do that?
Yes, I think it has to be done quickly. Sometimes you just have to pull the Band-Aid off, and I think we all want this done and in place before our next election cycles.
Minister, on the Bill 23 related financial audits, it sounds like their scope is being expanded now for these 3 communities to look at sort of finances as they relate to this dissolution. Is that going to affect the timeline of them? I know municipalities were hoping to have certainty before the next budget cycle.
No, I don't think so. We started the procurement for all 4 municipalities in terms of the audit, and some other municipalities as well. But I think the timing is right for both the audit process. Obviously, the transition board will act more in a facilitator role, and you've seen in the release how we'll move forward with the other municipalities in terms of facilitation. But this is a big step moving forward. But as I indicated earlier, every time we talk about our housing pledges, and I want to thank all 3 mayors for signing on to the pledge. They've been amazing in terms of the support and the audits as well. They've been very supportive of the audits. But we need to move forward quickly, and I'm hoping again that we'll have the will of the legislature, if it's so inclined to consider moving this forward in a quick manner.
Why include Simcoe in the facilitator process?
Simcoe's added to the facilitator. I think we've always had that discussion, given the high growth pressures in Simcoe County, that we need to have that discussion around a facilitator. Servicing is obviously an issue. You talk to, as I do, the municipalities within that county, and servicing is a big question, as it is with the 3 municipalities that are beside me. So it's we need to have them in the mix.
Minister, can you provide just a little bit of clarity? Because I think people who are from Peel Region are going to be asking a lot of questions, and I know there are a lot of details still to be worked out, but is there a chance, if they're all being divided up, that they can share any services after that?
Absolutely. I think the transition board, and with collaboration with the mayors, could ultimately decide that some of those regional services could be provided in a shared service format. Mayor Crombie alluded to it in one of her answers. So I think there is great opportunity for that collaboration and cooperation as we move forward. But again, I want to reiterate that if you live in Caledon or Brampton or Mississauga, the frontline services that you receive today, I want those preserved on January 1st, 2025. In fact, I think we should look to a view of strengthening them. And I think that process is there. Mayor Grove has talked about employees, and I think that's really, really important, right? As a former CAO, you're going from 4 municipalities with 4 CAOs down to 3. So there is going to be some employment issues that, again, we're going to need the 3 mayors and the transition board to work collaboratively together as we move forward. And again, from an employee standpoint, as someone who worked in a municipality, you want to provide that certainty. You don't want this to drag out for months and months and months before you get a transition board in place and you get those first meetings with these communities. You have to, in all honesty, you have to move fast.
And is Peel Police one of those options?
That's up to the mayors and the transition board to deal with policing services. I think it's an important conversation that needs to take place. But again, go back to frontline services. We need to ensure that same exceptional frontline services that Peel Region Police provide today. We want to make sure that that continues full force on January 1st, 2025.
Minister, why did you reject amalgamation? I mean, a previous Conservative government amalgamated the city of Toronto and 6 municipalities into the city of Toronto. Was the megacity idea ever thought of, or is it too unwieldy?
I think. Listen, we've had talking about Hazel, we've had campaigns run in Peel Region on this model. Everything I've done in terms of housing, when it comes to Peel Region, different from every other region in Ontario, you end up having a conversation about what are you going to do. What's the final governance structure going to look like if you're going to implement these measures? And as I said, this conversation comes up every time. The government's taken decisive action, and we've put resources into the transition board that will ultimately have a smooth a transition as we can.
Minister, in York Region, there are similar complaints about how they spend their money and where that money goes.
There's been no one, Colin. There's been no Hazel McCallion in any other municipality in Ontario that's campaigned on a certain structural model moving forward. I'm open to conversations with people, but they're not going to be behind closed doors. If a mayor wants a different format, they're going to have to get in front of the podium and talk about it. And no other region's done that. None.
Minister, if this is all about what's best for the people of these municipalities, why was there no big public consultation whatsoever before you reached this decision?
There's been consultations, there's been election campaigns, there's been polling, there's been studies. This is not something that we just decided without some significant thought. And again, think about the things that I've initiated when it comes to housing supply. This conversation, every time you go into Peel Region, is front and center. So we're dealing with it. Thank you.